Awesome.
So yeah, we're going to talk about real estate though, but this is what it's all about, is, you know, having these opportunities to kind of sneak away midweek to your little getaway in the trees and still be able to run your business.
Yes.
So, all right, how do I
Awesome.
get going with this?
So yeah.
Okay. So
we're gonna
my
is, you know,
we got a little bit of background noise, Thomas. Maybe there's a way to.
It's gone now. Hold on.
All right. We good there? Yeah. Okay, so this is my contact info. It's also on the last screen. So if you miss it here, you can write it down later. I'm going to cover mostly ADU stuff, but obviously I do a lot of other things in real estate too. So if there's, and I have all night here, I need to eat dinner at some point. So maybe not too much past 9 o'clock, but I'm happy to stay and just answer any questions about real estate or anything you're working on that you want some help with at the end of the presentation. So, but what I'm really going to focus on is just doing 3 different deal profiles. And I think you'll get some really good information out of that and maybe get some ideas for what you might want to do yourself. Some people were asking in the breakout sessions, can you build ADUs on rental investment property? Absolutely. Not just your own residence, but rental properties too. So hopefully you can get some ideas about what you can do for yourself. And JDUs, junior accessory dwelling units. Okay, this is a new thing as of 2020. So this will hopefully give you some ideas as well. Oops. So anyway, I wanted to just show you who I am and for you to get thinking about what your why is. You know, why are you even doing this business? And I realize everybody talks about this, but this is really important to really know what this is. I mean, this business is crazy. If you're a real estate agent, you know how crazy it can be. If you're an investor trying to do fix and flips, I mean, you just run into every kind. There we go. I think I'm unmuted again. So are we good? You can hear me, Thomas?
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay.
I just had to mute everybody else.
You were muting everybody. That's okay. So just think about why you're doing this business. I mean, to whether you have a job, whether you're fixing and flipping, whether you're a realtor, you're exchanging time for money, which is fine. But eventually you have to set something up for yourself that's passive, that pays you, because you don't want to be 90 years old trying to fix and flip houses. At least I don't. So be thinking about that. You know, have some greater purpose as to why you're doing all this and working so hard, and that will be your motivation in times of you know, when you get down and you wonder why you're even doing this. So anyway, after this meeting, I said I'm in Lake Arrowhead. I have my guitar up here. I'm going to play some songs. I love that. It's such a stress reliever for me. I drive a 1979 Volkswagen bus, and the rest of these pictures are my family and friends. And I'm actually from Canada, and I moved to the US in 2007 to start this business. So I've bought about 250 houses since I moved here. Somebody mentioned they are with Renatus. Well, actually, Renatus used to be called Nouveau Riche prior to that. And I joined that a couple decades, I guess 15 years ago or so. So that's actually what got me started. So I used to fly down to take those courses, and I go back to Canada and try to, you know, do real estate, and it just is completely different. It worked completely differently. So finally I packed a bag, got a one-way ticket, came to LA, and just learned it. You know, I took classes, and nowadays there's all kinds of real estate club meetings like this one. This is a great place to network. I've met private money lenders at clubs like this. I've met people that have wholesaled me properties. I've met people I've wholesaled properties to. Just a great networking. So thank you, Thomas, for putting this together, because it's really a great resource. So anyway, I sort of fell into the niche of buying hoarder houses. Has anybody seen that TV show Hoarders.com, or Hoarders, I guess it's called? Well, anyway, I probably about 80% of the houses I buy are looking and smelling like that. And so I don't know how I fell into that, but that's, they make for good before and after pictures for sure. And then lately I started building ADUs. When I first found out about ADUs, I couldn't believe it. It's like you can have 2 houses on a lot now, basically. And so ADUs have basically, the cash flow off the ADUs basically saved my butt during the pandemic. Because, when everything was so chaotic, I had that cash flow. And in my opinion, ADUs are affordable housing. That's what it is. I mean, not technically, but they're smaller houses usually, and they're rented for rents that are great for me for cash flow, but also good for a tenant that's affordable. So, and I also do some small developments. I do additions and some lot splitting. And so you might recognize a couple of these guys in the picture. Shara is on here. He's with ADU Resource Center. Him and Avo, the architect with that company, I've worked with him, and my friends are using them for the building of their ADUs on their property. Great resource. I mean, Avo knows, I don't know, he must have a photographic memory, but he just knows everything about every ADU law, it seems. So I really rely on those guys. So this is a picture of us at one of my ADUs. So I call this, I wanted to show you guys sort of the core of my business, what I buy. I call this the mullet house. It's business in the front, party in the back. I drove up to this one. It looks normal from the street. And then I walked around to the back and it's just like complete fire damaged property. So this is typical of what I buy. This was actually in San Bernardino, this property. So, and then I also do the extreme hoard situations. So some people have the before and after. I actually have before and after pictures. So you can see this property, I think this was in Granada Hills actually. So that picture on the left, that's probably about 2 feet of hoard. And, I actually haven't fallen into any hoard yet. But I've walked across the top of that because you sort of need to see what the layout of the house is, to make sure it's not actually a 2-bedroom when you think you're buying a 4-bedroom, right? Because that makes a difference with the value. So I literally walk over top of that, trying to get from room to room. Sometimes it's right piled to the ceiling, and there's no way I can get through. So I walk around the exterior to try to figure it out. But you can see this is the same angle. You can see that green stove in the left picture, and then again, the same angle in the middle picture, and then the remodeled kitchen. So this is, this is squalor condition, right? It's garbage hoarding and biohazard has to get involved with something like this. So, and usually at this state, you don't have anything that's working. Heating doesn't work. Plumbing doesn't work, water, none of that's on, so this is a mental illness actually at this point. So I really feel that my company does a service to help these people get into assisted living homes, or if they've already passed away, helping the family members, deal with properties like this where they don't even know where to start. So anyway, just to show you what I do. So let's jump into ADUs, but feel free to ask me questions at the end on either ADUs or my flipping business. I don't mind answering any of that. So ADUs, like I said, I think they came out in 2017. I didn't find out or know about them until 2018. Hopefully this is a lot of, maybe you've heard about it already, but you don't really know where to start with ADUs. you're basically putting a second unit on an R1 zoned property. You're basically making it a duplex. So you can either build a brand new house detached, which a lot of them that's what I've done. You can attach it to the house if you want to attach it. Let's say maybe you're short on space and you are trying to find a place to put it. I've had a friend build it above her garage, so you can do that. You can also convert a garage, so the actual garage. Now, in a lot of cases, I like to keep the garage because that usually has some value, even to tenants, right? Because they put all their stuff in there. So if there's a way, and you get more rent because of that. But you can basically have a second structure of any sort and call it an ADU. So you can have, and people do it for different reasons. I wanted the extra rental income, but people will actually, they were called granny suites at one point, and you can house, your family, extended family members. So in actually a couple of my rental properties, I rent the entire property, the main house and the ADU out to the same family. So they've got family in the main house and an extended family in the ADU. I also put a couple of, now this is for City of LA, but there's a program where the government will actually subsidize the rent. Now, maybe there's a similar program in the Inland Empire as well. So you want to look into that. Maybe similar to Section 8, not quite, but similar in that the government is going to chip in some money to help pay that rent. So look into that if that's an option. It's a little less rent, but it's a more or less guaranteed rent. This is a question I have for anybody who knows on this call, because I was talking about this in one of the breakout groups, whether SB 9 is passed. And Shara, you might know, put it in the chat box if you know. I don't think it's passed yet, but somebody thought maybe it had passed. So look into SB 9 and SB 10. These are two things on the table right now where if they do pass, it basically allows for more units on your property. You can split a lot in two, and now you can have 4 houses, 2 on each. So look into that, because there's definitely some opportunity with that. I'm splitting a lot right now in Los Angeles. I'll show you a picture of it later on. It's this with SB 9, it's supposed to speed up the process a little bit. Now, I don't know, speeding up anything with the government, I don't know if that's even a reality, but they just move so slow on everything. But just know that that's going to create some opportunity. So as of January last year, there's no owner occupancy requirement. Okay, so when I started building my ADUs, I started building them in 2018, and I was still building them and finishing them in 2019. Well, I didn't know this, but halfway through I was building them, I was getting letters from each of the cities saying, and by the way, you need to sign and notarize and record this covenant saying you're going to live in either the main house or the ADU. Well, I had 5 on the go, so how was I supposed to live in 5 ADUs at one time? So I didn't know this. Anyway, I sort of got around that problem. But as of last year, you don't need to live in one. You can have both rented. You can rent them to the same tenant, or you can rent them to 2 separate tenants. In hindsight, I probably would have separated out the utilities for these ADUs, even though it's a chunk of money to do that, because down the road you can charge the tenant in the ADU and have them on their separate utility bills so that you're not paying for that. Because otherwise it's a little tricky to split that up. Also, as of last year, there's no minimum lot size required anymore. So each city used to have, you had to have a certain minimum lot square footage in order to be able to build an ADU. I remember on one property, I think it was Garden Grove, I think it was 6,800 it had to be. Well, now they've done away with that. Los Angeles was 5,000 square feet. You don't have to have a minimum. Now you still have to find space to put an ADU, but you can get pretty creative with that as well. The ADUs had to be half the size of the main house. Now they can be up to 1,200 square feet. Okay, that's big. That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom easily. So you may not want one that big, but I think one thing to consider when you are looking to build an ADU is you're going to want to see what the rents will be. So if you can squeeze in a 3rd bedroom instead of a 2-bedroom, how much more rent will that give you? Maybe that pencils out a little better. You're also supposed to get approval within 60 days. Well, okay, you know, COVID just slows everything down, and they're still kind of using that as a way to get back to you. But some cities aren't too bad. And actually, in some ways, COVID has made things slightly easier where you can actually submit everything online now. So it just might be a little slower overall. But the fees are also lower than they used to be. And I remember a couple of you had mentioned you're in the multifamily space. Somebody was buying 4-plexes, I think. Here's a great opportunity. And you'll want to see if this opportunity exists in your city. But for sure in Los Angeles, there's a lot of those 4-plexes where the parking is sort of underneath and then you walk up the stairs and the units are above. Well, a lot of those buildings are required to be retrofitted for earthquake. So there's an opportunity to buy something like that where you've got to spend the money anyway to retrofit those. Why not convert those carports into ADUs? And in a lot of cases, you can have 2 ADUs on multifamily property. So convert the carports below into ADUs for additional income. So something to think about if that's your, I mean, you could even target that specifically for leads. So these are the cities I've built. I sort of, I guess, thought about where I wanted to have rental property. And these were sort of the areas. I was actually going to flip some of these houses when I was buying them. And I thought, well, wait a minute. These are all solid houses that really don't make sense from a cash flow perspective on their own. But when you spend the money to build the ADU, then suddenly you can get more cash flow, and then the whole deal sort of makes sense. So I ended up, since these are all sort of grouped in the same general area, I thought, why not keep these as rental properties? They actually make sense to hold as rentals when I build the ADU. So, so that's my experience with where I've built. I've done everything from studios. So basically just, like 1 room with a bathroom and a kitchen, all the way up to 2 bedrooms, 755 square feet. Like I said, you can go up to 1,200 square feet. Soft costs are basically anything that you would spend leading up to putting the shovel in the ground. So you have to hire a designer or an architect. You would pay the planning fees to submit to the city for them to review. You would pay for any other fees that the city wants. There used to be school fees and park fees and all this and that, all the way up to paying for permits. So that's considered your soft costs. So on average, when I was doing mine a couple of years ago, and I'm about to find out with the next 3 that I'm doing, I was paying around $20,000 on average. On the cheap side, I paid $2,000 for one. And actually that's in my case study tonight. So we'll go over that one. And I've paid up to $60,000 on one. Just, if I have to say, just don't go to Bellflower. Just don't bother. They're just so expensive. Anyway, construction costs. This is a moving target. This is going to be hard for you to really gauge this because the material costs on everything is changing so rapidly. But if you're trying to ballpark, what is it going to cost you to build? Let's say you want to build a 1-bedroom, 500 square foot ADU, times it by 250. That will get you in the ballpark of what you're going to spend. It's probably a little bit more than that. I think people are getting quoted about 250 to 300 a square foot. So use maybe 300 on the high end. So that's just to help you ballpark what it's going to cost to build it. Landscaping is extra. I would really give this some consideration. Don't just plop an ADU on your property anywhere and take up every last inch of backyard space. Think, because even a tenant wants backyard space, especially, you know, coming out of this pandemic, what does everybody want? Some outdoor space. So think about how you're going to maybe create a little outdoor space for that ADU tenant. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but you know, you'll want to budget a little bit for that. What I did in a couple of cases was I made sure I had extra money to build some fencing. So then you can sort of make it private. So your tenants from the main house to the ADU are not all sharing the same backyard. You can have a fence in the middle. JDUs. I don't know if that's the right word I'm using, but it's junior ADU. It's basically the same thing as an ADU, except they can't be any more than 500 square feet. So, and another main thing about junior ADUs is it has to be part of the main house. So you have to carve a part off from the main house, or it has to be space that's already attached to the main house. So for example, if you have a 2,000 square foot house and you have a master bedroom bathroom at the back, let's say 400 square feet master bed bath, you can basically, you know, close off that, like put a wall there, or you might want to actually do like a double lock or whatever. And you can put a kitchen in that area and create a separate entrance for that. And that could be a junior ADU, and you could rent that separately. So your main house now becomes 1,600 square feet. Your junior ADU is now 400 square feet, but it's that section carved off of the main house. I'm actually doing one right now. It is a garage that's attached to the main house, and you can convert that into a junior ADU. It can also be an ADU, but I already have an ADU on that property. So now I want to have a junior ADU on that property as well. And so you're basically putting a triplex on an R1 lot, right? So, I mean, you want to do this tactfully and you want to think about how it's going to impact the neighborhood. But if you can do it and it's appropriate, do it for sure. For sure. So, yeah, junior ADUs, they just came up with this as of last year as well. So some good possibilities there. So, you know, why would you even bother? Well, for me, it was the extra income. I wanted extra income off these properties to help offset and hopefully pay the mortgage down faster. And there is a housing shortage, in case you haven't read the news lately, which good for you if you haven't, because most of the time it's negative, but we need some housing. And in my opinion, whether you're building an ADU with, you know, a company like ADU Resource Center, or you're looking into these modular homes, which Thomas, you said you're part of Stephen's project and he's actually based out of Riverside, I believe. He's in the Inland Empire. You know, you can, these are basically affordable housing units, in my opinion. So I think that's a good way to solve some of this problem we're in. So, and do it while you still can. I don't foresee them doing away with allowing this anytime soon. But still, you never know. They change their mind from one day to the next. I would build one while you can. So in terms of funding, this is tricky. I mean, I would, if you've recently purchased a property, then I would just start by contacting your existing lender, like who did your loan, because they already have all your stuff. You can talk to them and see about getting a second or some type of line of credit. I chose to just use cash, right? Because I flip houses, I had a bit of cash, so I just used the cash and then I did a refinance. But whatever you do, you should have in mind what your end game is with these. You don't want to just use cash and, you know, you are relying, or hard money. That's even worse. It's okay to do it with hard money, but have a sure plan on how you're going to refinance. Because you don't, in my opinion, I would not choose to have hard money on a property where it's a rental, right? Because hard money is high rates and it's interest only. You'll never get that loan paid off. So you want to have a way to have the principal being paid down on that. So that eventually, you have a chance to pay it off, and then you have, great cash flow. So have an idea of that before you even start the process, how you're going to pay for it. So let's get into the case studies. The first one is in Lake Arrowhead, where I happen to be sitting right at this moment, and the sun has gone down, so I'm kind of looking out into darkness. But if I look to my right, I'm looking right at that fireplace. So I bought this property a couple of years ago. It was fully hoarded. Yes, I'm sitting right where I walked on top of 1.5 feet of hoard. I think it had been vacant for a while, but when I walked in, I could hear rumbling in the back. So I didn't know if there were squatters or if there were rats or what was going on. So I was balancing myself with one hand against the wall so I didn't fall in, and the other hand I had a flashlight trying to walk through, because there was also no electricity and it was boarded up, so I was having a hard time seeing. So this was pretty overwhelming to get through this property. But when I did, I discovered I had to clean it all out, really, to be able to walk through and analyze what I was getting myself into. And there was this door, and I thought, well, this seems a bit odd. It didn't really seem like it was part of the main house. Where did this go? So I cleaned it out and I opened it, and this turned out to be a permitted room above the garage. So hello, ADU potential, right? This was just an ideal spot that was already permitted as, whatever, a bonus room. But obviously, I could see, yeah, this could easily be a secondary unit. So what I did was, what the county of San Bernardino required me to do was submit drawings. So that's what I did. I had somebody come up, sketch it out where I would put the kitchen in. By the way, ADUs, it's not necessarily a kitchenette. It's a full kitchen. You can have a full-size stove, full-size fridge if you want. Washer and dryer it can be its own separate, unit. So bathroom, bedroom, I chose to make it a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. It's actually a pretty big unit. And I ended up furnishing it. So as you can see, this is not the one I'm in. This is the ADU. So the thing about ADUs, you're technically not supposed to run them as short-term rentals. Okay, meaning you can't rent ADUs for less than 30 days. But this one, I wanted to furnish it anyway. So I furnished it, and I actually have it on Airbnb, but I have a 30-day minimum. So I get various people that rent this sort of on a month-to-month basis that's furnished. So that's just the way I set up this ADU. In County of San Bernardino, you're allowed to have short-term rentals for the main house, which is where I'm sitting. So I'm actually in my own short-term rental right now, just enjoying this property. And you can get a permit to run it as a short-term rental. But ADUs, you're not supposed to be running these as short-term rental, meaning less than 30 days. So here's the secret door on the left picture there. You can see that angle. And so here's the numbers on this one. You can't sell an ADU separately. Okay, so obviously it remains as part of the parcel, and it has the same parcel number, and I've kept them both as rental properties. So the way I structured this property is, because I live in Los Angeles, I don't really want to be running up here dealing with tenants in Lake Arrowhead all the time. I actually leased this property out to a tenant. They pay me $2,000 a month. The tenant pays all the utilities, but the tenant does whatever they want with the property. So if they have a good month and they have, it all rented out, both units, then they basically make above and beyond the $2,000 that they pay me a month. So I think you call that master leasing. I don't know what the term is, but that's how this one is structured. To me, it's awesome because I get to use my own property when I want to come up here and have some peace and quiet. And but at the same time, I don't have to worry about, all this stuff. And, Airbnbs are a great business, but it's not something I want to be running in the long term because there's always little things you got to deal with. So this is a great win-win situation. I get the cash flow I want out of the property, and my tenant gets to make a bit of extra money by running this business. So this was the cheap one, right? Because to convert and get this permitted with a certificate of occupancy only cost me $2,000. And basically that was the cost of getting the designer to come up and draw the floor plan and pay the permit fees. The county inspector came and looked at what I did and they're like, yep, looks good, signed it off and gave me a certificate of occupancy. So this was a cheap one. I just had this property appraised at 415 and I paid 100,000 in 2018. So I had a little bit of luck there with some appreciation. But I also spent a lot of money to clean it up. I mean, I paid 22,000 just to get all the stuff out. And there's a lot of stairs. If anybody knows this market, there just seems to be a lot of stairs in Lake Arrowhead. So can you imagine these guys worked for their money to clean this out? Construction costs to renovate the main house that I'm in, and the ADU was 130 total. And then of course I furnished both units. So you may be asking yourself, well, who takes 100,000 for their property? You must have had to rip somebody off to get that kind of a deal. Actually, the sellers gave me a handwritten thank you card. So just to show you, if your mindset is, oh, geez, I'm ripping somebody off to buy this property, that's the wrong mindset. When you can truly help somebody out of their situation to the point where they write you a handwritten thank you card, you're doing something good. You're creating a win-win. I would never buy a house from somebody who felt like they were getting ripped off. So I really want that to sink in, because sometimes people have a hard time really thinking about, paying a certain price for something and thinking that's too low, or why would somebody ever take that? This is why you're doing it. You're really helping somebody out of a situation. So I wanted to share that. So, okay, let's talk about building a structure from scratch. This one is in Stanton, which is in North Orange County by Garden Grove, Buena Park area, if you know that area, Anaheim. This was another hoarded situation. The owner actually passed in the house of natural causes, and basically, you know how dusty your house gets if you haven't cleaned up in a week. Okay, well, think about 30 years worth of dust. That's what this was. You couldn't even see the countertops in a lot of cases. So, and see this garbage bin? That's where I signed the offer with the seller, because there was nowhere to sit or stand inside the house. So we did it right on top of that garbage can. So, I told my nephew, who was 8 years old at the time, I said, I think I can put an ADU on this. He said, so Andy, Kristi, I'm gonna design an ADU. So anyway, my 8-year-old nephew came up with this design. I thought it was pretty cute. He's got the bedroom, and his living room's a little bit narrow perhaps, but he's got the right idea. So I'm like, this is perfect, Hudson. So anyway, I took this design over to my architect, and this is what we created for real. This is one of my favorite ADUs. I love the layout. I love the way it's situated on the property, and I'll go over why. So it's a 500 square foot ADU. It's 1 bed, 1 bath. And I don't know how well this is coming up on your screen, but the bedroom is at the top, and at the very top, you'll see that's actually a sliding patio door. And so that's where I created a private backyard space, and you'll see the pictures in a minute. So you picture that when I show it to you. So that's where I created a private backyard space. That closet off the bedroom is actually a walk-in closet. It's pretty good size. There's a stackable laundry in the hallways. You can see that. There's a regular size bathroom off the hallway. And then in the front, you've got the living, dining, kitchen area combo. If I could make one change, it would maybe to make that a tad bit longer. So the width of this is 13 feet. The length of this ADU is 39 feet. So maybe if I could have fit another, a couple of feet, maybe 42, 44, it would be perfect, because I'm a little bit tight in that kitchen area for a table, but you'll see how I arrange the furniture in it. But I just love this layout. It's just a really good functional layout. And the way it sits on the property, well, I'll show you that in the pictures, be easier. So this is how it's coming together. The main house, you can sort of see it a little bit there on the left. And the street, you actually come down that pathway in the middle to each house. So it's almost like it's sort of side by side on the property. So it's a really good layout. There's some houses where I've had to put the ADU in behind the main house. It still works. It's not ideal. It would be better if you had a back alleyway to access that ADU. It would just make it a little bit more private. But this one's good. This one's accessible from the front, the main house to the left, the ADU to the right. And it's really weird to see this framing going up, because you walk in there and you're like, how is this all going to fit? And then the walls go up and you're like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. So, I would recommend showing up to your project, even if it's on a rental, to see how things are going. You'll pick up little tidbits. You can notice where light switches are going. I mean, this should all be done with a professional architect, but still, you want to see how things are sort of coming together. And there it is there. It's basically a stucco rectangular box, nothing special, but man, I love the cash flow off of this property. So, and you can see towards the back there where I've created an 8-foot white vinyl fence. Can you kind of see that at the back there? Okay, that's the private backyard space for this ADU. So I actually did the same thing with this one. I furnished it, but I rent it furnished month to month. Right now, and I did a music theme. I took I lived there for a little while actually. But I ended up taking these are my instruments. So I took those out, but I kept the music theme because I think it's cool. And I have a traveling nurse in there right now from Chicago. He actually booked through Airbnb, but I have a 30-day minimum set, right? But you can also find traveling nurses on a website called Furnished Finder. I think I said that right, Furnished Finder. And that is a way that you can find people that are needing furnished space for a few months at a time. So I'm netting $2,100 a month off of this right now. And that's a 1-bedroom in Stanton, of all places. So that's what these are renting for. There's the bathroom off the hallway, the stackable laundry off the hallway. And you can see this private backyard space off the patio doors off the bedroom. So it was a good way to and actually the setbacks for this backyard in Stanton at the time were 15 feet. Some of the setbacks have been reduced to 4 feet only, but I'm glad it was 15 because this gave me the space to have the private backyard. So, and your architect will help you with this. They'll know all the setbacks and they'll know how to build it on the property. So here's the numbers. Soft costs again, 22,000. Construction 105. If you're trying to do the math there, that is definitely on the low end these days. You're not going to be able to build a brand new house for 100 grand, but just know to basically use a 250 to 300 a square foot to sort of get yourself in a ballpark calculation. The landscaping, I spent a few thousand on, and then obviously on the furnishings and appliances. You don't have to furnish the ADUs. You can rent them unfurnished as a regular rental. But I just chose to furnish this one because part of it is I wanted to use it for myself from time to time. Now, anybody who's using cash to build these, beware. I don't know if this has changed at all, but when I had this appraised to try to get my cash out in March 2019, the appraiser only gave it a 30,000 value. Are you kidding me? Like, I couldn't believe it. I don't know if that's gotten any better. What they were trying to use for an appraisal is they're trying to find single family houses plus ADU. Well, that doesn't exist. I'm like the first one building these in these cities. So they would not use a duplex. They would not use two on a lot. So maybe this will be changing. I think it is. I hope it is. But just this is why you should have a clear idea how you're going to pay for this to start with. At the end of the day, you know, I just didn't pull as much money back out. It's okay. I had the cash to leave in, and in hindsight, I guess it was okay, because what else are you going to do with cash these days anyway? It's hard to know where to make investments. So I just left it in the property. I did a cash out refi, but it was a lot less cash getting back out than I had put in. But, you know, that's what it was. So I actually have 2,200 on here, including utilities. It's actually 2,100, I think I net through this rental. And I guess something I want you to think about is, if you were to have cash, let's just say you had 150 or 200,000, where are you going to put that as an investment, right? You can choose different investment houses to put your money in, or maybe not even houses. You could choose to invest your money in notes. But where are you going to put that money? And there's no right answer to this. I chose to put it into ADUs because I thought, you know, even if you can kind of calculate how many years is it going to take to get your money back, you know, or does it make sense for you to buy a free and clear property in Florida, or there's somebody from New Jersey, or wherever you are, whatever state you're in? Think about the trade-offs of that. For me, I know these are going to be popular properties to rent. I mean, California is a little tricky with the tenant landlord laws, but it's just what I chose to do. And as long as you screen well, you're always going to have good tenants, or you try to get good tenants. So think about that. And this helps me with my cash flow on that property, because just to rent the main house, you know, it kind of covered the mortgage, but with the ADU rent, it definitely covers mortgage and then some. I actually have cash flow on this property. So who would think you can actually have positive cash flow on California property in Orange County? But it does work. So a lot of information there. Let's do the third case study, and then I can answer some questions. I'm picking on Bellflower here. If you've heard this presentation before, you can just skip this part, just skip Bellflower altogether, okay? So I hate to pick on this city. In the end, it worked out, and actually this is a nice cash flow property. Just know your cities. If you have already done some building, or maybe a fix and flip, or you've gotten permits, you've had to deal with the city on some reason in whatever city you've worked with, you know, that's maybe a good start. I guess just give that some consideration. So this was a backyard. I couldn't even get in the backyard, and I took this picture to show you how high the weeds were. They were higher than the roof line. So first things first, I had to clear all that out so I could see what I was dealing with back then. And this owner had actually gone into an assisted living home, and she needed the money from the sale of this property to afford the assisted living. So, you know, here was the inside. Sadly, she was in a bad hoarding situation, and there were a lot of bottles. This was actually a difficult property to walk through. I don't actually think I walked through some of this because I would have slipped for sure with all these bottles. So a lot of spider webs just everywhere. You can see them. So this was the inside. And then finally I got the backyard cleared out. So you can see, you know, ADU potential, right? So now in this property, I'll point out this block wall at the back would have been ideal if that could have been an alley right there, right? Because then your tenants for the ADU could access it through the alleyway. But anyway, this turned out okay. They just walked down the side of the main house to get to their door. So this one, I actually fit a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 750, I think this was the 750 square foot one. And this was the design. You know, there's little things that if you work with a good architect, they're going to help you along the way. This one, do you see where the beds are shown in the pictures on the bedrooms? I actually took out those windows because I thought it doesn't make sense to have a bed against a window, right? Because then there's no place to put your bed frame. So there were already 2 big windows on the left-hand side, as you can see. And I thought, well, that would be good enough for light. So little things like that, I sort of tweaked along the way. And so again, I built this one detached. And turns out it was in liquefaction. If you don't know what this is, basically it's where a property is sitting on some sort of water table. And I didn't know this because you can actually find this out by looking on the NHD report, by the way. Well, I didn't look at that. And now I know why I need to look at it when I buy a property. And so what we had to do was bring in this truck, which drills down 50 feet. And it takes a little sample of the soil down there and they analyze it to make sure you can actually build on top of it. So it also means that you have to compact the soil. So little did I know I'd be having a mini Grand Canyon in my backyard here. But what you have to do is dig up 5 feet down right to the edge of the property and then put the soil back in and compact it a foot, and then have a third-party engineer come over with a little pokey stick and poke it and make sure it's compacted. And then you put another foot of dirt back. And this was a bit of a process. So don't let this scare you, but look at your NHD report and see if you're in liquefaction before you start to build, and just know that this is going to be an extra cost. Don't let it deter you from building, but just know there's an extra cost associated. Also, it is not a good idea to do this during raining season, which it never rains in California, except of course when I'm trying to build an ADU in Bellflower, because then your backyard turns into a swimming pool. So these are all the mistakes you can learn from my expensive errors here. So I had to wait for that to dry up. I put more dirt in. Of course, it's being compacted, so I need more dirt. So where do they decide to deliver it? Right in my front property, blocking my garage door. And just to add another insult to injury, the porta potty guys come and deliver the porta potty, and they put it right on top of the front lawn, on top of the sprinkler system, and the gravel also right in the way of everything. So this was just a project where if it could go wrong, it did. So, but we got through it. Finally got foundation poured, and the ADU starting to be built. The walls go up. Sometimes things don't work out exactly as they say in the plans. We were a few inches off on, this was the stackable washer and dryer for the hallway. It wasn't deep enough. So luckily we caught this while we were doing the framing, so we could add a couple inches and sort of make that correction. So this is important this is why it's important what you should show up to your project and just see the progress and what's being done, and, you know, keeping an eye on things. Try to catch problems before they become bigger problems. City of Bellflower requires you to build your own sidewalk. If you're doing any type of renovations to your property over $25,000. So, and you can't just use anybody to do that. It has to be a contractor with a special license. So just know that, like, if you're in the city asking about what the fees are going to be to build your ADU, ask them a list of things as to what the costs are going to be, so you know that up front. So my numbers on this one, they started off okay. I was around 16,000, but then, you know, all these other fees just started adding up. About halfway through construction, city mailed me a letter saying, whoopsie, we forgot to charge you a few things. You better come in and pay these, or we're not going to sign off your final permits. So that was a public facilities fee. I don't even know what the stuff was. Parkland fee, sidewalk construction. So, you know, I ended up paying, I don't know, 15,000 or something extra than I anticipated. So again, this is why it's important to check with the planner to see what your fees are going to be before you get started. Not that I would have been turned off by building one, but I just would have been a little more prepared with how much money I needed. So the construction was about 135. Again, that's going to be a bit higher these days. And then, of course, my appraisal came in only 20,000 in value. So just know your exit. It's okay to use cash. It's okay to use hard money. Just have a plan to refinance. A couple of my friends that have built ADUs on their personal residence, they got lines of credit. So they had some equity in their home. They were able to pull out a line of credit, so you could do it that way. So you've got the money ready to go. So in the end, this turned out okay, because I actually lease both the main house and the ADU to one guy, and he actually lives in the ADU and he rents out the main house. And so he pays the rent for both properties, and he subleases the main house. So he's paying me $5,600. So at the end of the day, that's a good income off this property for me. And anyway, I hope I didn't scare you on that last one, but I want you to be aware of this stuff, just so you know going into it. So I'm actually doing my first junior ADU, and it's a garage conversion. Like I mentioned, it's attached to the main house just by a breezeway, and that's allowed. And ADU Resource Center can attest to this. You can usually get plans and permits and the whole thing built for around 100,000. So that's for a garage conversion. So, I mean, when you think that a garage will rent, and this is in Orange County, North Orange County, will rent for 1,500, but it only costs you 100 grand. Like, that is, do as many of those as you can, because that makes sense. That pencils out, right? So when you're thinking about what you want to do, think about your neighborhood. First of all, is it appropriate? Like, you don't want to just build everything you can and now you're a nuisance to the neighborhood. But for most cases, these are allowed. Why not do them? So you want to make sure, maybe you still have some off-street parking. That's not even required these days for ADUs. But maybe you want to have it anyway. Just go to each city's website and you can find out what the requirements are. That's a great place to start. You could also contact an architect, and they will know, like Avo, who introduced himself at the beginning. Again, he knows so much on so many cities. It's like he has them memorized somehow. But that's a good place to start. If you know somebody who him or somebody that can help you figure out where to get started. And it's usually with an architect or a designer. and ask all the fees up front. Okay, the worst thing you want to get into is you're halfway done and, you know, there's more money for this and more money for that. You don't have any more money to finish the project. You should know how you're going to pay for it all up front. So this was actually, this picture, it was an attached ADU I built. So this was in a parking impacted neighborhood in Los Angeles. And I thought, you know what, I want to keep that garage. It's valuable to keep that garage in this neighborhood. So I put the ADU on the back of it. So that's just another type of idea that you can do. If you have a property, an investment property, or even your own residence, and you're overwhelmed by hearing all this, or you just want a second set of eyes on it, please reach out to me. Just email me, put your address in the subject line, and I'll look it up and I'll just give you a call and we'll just talk on the phone to see what you can do. I don't charge for that. You know, if I can provide resources, I'm happy to do it. If you want to remember me for any hoarder houses that you come across, that'd be awesome. You can wholesale them to me. And would love to work with you in some capacity, maybe on a fix and flip or something like that. But for the ADU consulting stuff, I don't want anything. Just, you know, reach out to me if I can help you in any way. So that is more or less it. This last picture is a lot split I'm doing. This is in Los Angeles. I'm splitting the lot into two. There's already two houses on the property. I'm going to expand that house on the left and do an addition on it. And I'm going to build two ADUs on, I'm going to build one ADU on each property, and I'm going to build a 2-car garage on each property. So that's kind of a fun little thing that I've been waiting forever to get permits and plans for, but I'm patient, and eventually it'll come through and it'll be a good development project. So, you know, maybe this is an idea for you as well, to look at something like this and go, oh, well, you know, what if I could find a corner lot that's a bigger property? You know, would that be worth it to you to, you know, because these take longer, of course, but maybe you live in one and you rent the other one for extra income, and you are there while you try to get this lot split done. This one I think I'm going to end up keeping, but if you have a personal residence, after 2 years, you can sell that and you don't have to pay tax. If you're a single person, up to 250,000, you can net, you don't have to pay tax on. As a married couple, you can make 500,000. You don't have to pay tax on that if it's your principal residence. So that could be a way to make some money. Or if you end up getting a good loan on a property, I don't recommend selling that, because the loans, the interest rates right now are so low. You know, get into some 30-year fixed loans and you'll be glad you did in a few years from now, when, you know, maybe the interest rates will eventually go back up. You'll have a great loan in place. So, questions? I see there's a chat box here, but I don't have a very big screen. So if Thomas, maybe you want to read out the questions, or.
Actually, I wasn't really looking at the questions. I was doing a check-in because people start coming in as you were speaking. So I wanted to make sure they got in. If anybody have any questions at this moment, speak now. Just go ahead and just throw them to her. She's ready to grab.
So in terms of this, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I've noticed online that people, like, these companies are selling something called like casita, or like manufactured kind of homes that are like, you know, like you said, 500 square feet or 600 square feet, and they deliver it, and then they'll even maybe get a local contractor to help you install it. Is that something you've looked into, or what are the advantages or disadvantages of something like that?
Yeah, I actually went to a property in LA to see one of these homes. They basically depending on the size, bring it in two pieces and plop it on your property. And yeah, that's one way of doing it. In the end, I think it turned out to be a similar cost as the stick-built ones I was doing, because you still have to have a general contractor to handle the plumbing and the electrical piece and all that. So I think it's maybe personal preference. I don't think there's really a right way or wrong way of doing it. I just have a crew of, like my construction team I've been working with them for years. So it was just as easy for me to just go ahead and build them from scratch. But definitely maybe consider that option as well, like bringing in some, manufactured home or a mobile home. Like I think you can even have something on wheels these days. And that is something that I don't have a property to put one on, but for example, if you look at city of Los Angeles, for example, you can actually have something in on wheels as long as it's on a concrete slab and you plumb it in and you have the sewer tie-ins and all that. You can make that legit. So know that that's an option out there. I mean, I think that there has to be some way to make sure it's not just some old junky trailer or something, but there's many options. It just depends on sort of what's appropriate for the property and the neighborhood, I think.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Sharon, go next.
Yes, Kristi, great presentation. On the liquid fraction, I saw it on a property that I had in West Covina, but it looks like it was only on a portion of the lot. Can that be, or could it be that the diagram is just showing, because it was a diagonal line across the property in the rear of the house? So would they have to look at the whole lot? Is it general like a whole, like the lot would be on the water table? It couldn't just be a portion of the lot, or could it? Or do you know?
Well, there's some houses in Bellflower I know that are in partial liquefaction. So that can come up on the report. And yes, it doesn't matter. You still have to, dig down. Now in Bellflower, you have to dig down 5 feet. I'm doing one in city of LA, and it's in liquefaction as well. I only have to dig down 2 feet. Okay. Well, I still have to dig, I still have to bring in, but actually that property shouldn't be as difficult because it's easily accessible. Some of these backyards, to get a digger in is, you can't even get past the water heater that's on the side of the house, for example.
Right.
So you end up with, more costs here and there. But yeah, it's something that maybe an architect would know, or at least could help you look into, like if you wanted to do an ADU, you could inquire with the city planner, or an architect may know if you could inquire.
Yeah, this one would probably be pretty easy. It is a corner lot. It's easy accessible, but to check and see how far we would have to go down and so forth. So yeah, I appreciate that. The one other question on subdividing the lot. So I'm in Inland Empire, and we have some of the smallest houses and biggest lots. So one of the clients wanted to put, an ADU and maybe another structure on their property. And the city, and that was Rialto, said that they would not allow them to subdivide their property by themselves. They would have to get their neighbors to agree. Have you ran into any of that? Or I guess SB 9 and 10 would help us with that. But right now, are you running across any cities that resist you subdividing like you are?
Yeah, you still have to go through the whole neighborhood thing where you have to mail to a certain radius, and there's a meeting. It's done by Zoom now, where people can say no, they don't want that or this, and at the end of the day, the city is somewhat motivated to approve these because they do need the housing. So just keep that in mind, because I did have a couple of neighbors on this particular picture you're looking at that were like, no, we think the house is going to be too big or whatever. Well, I can barely read these plans, like I'm looking at the plans going, okay, how is this going to look? And you look at the elevations and, people don't know how to read a set of plans and know what this is going to, but I'm doing something tactful because obviously the city's not going to approve it if I'm just throwing something up there.
Right.
But yes, you do have to go through this process. Now, will SB9 make that easier? Hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully, the process will streamline a little bit.
Yeah. So
but
yeah, the city had told me it would be $20,000 to $30,000 plus 3 years to try to get it done. So
well, yeah, it is. Like, I don't want to deter you because I think this is a great strategy. And as frustrated as I get some days with how long it's taking, I would probably do it again. I would just
Okay.
make sure I could do it a little differently to make sure I have a little bit more cash flow off this property.
Okay.
But I've had plans submitted on this one in LA since November 2018.
Okay.
But again, not to deter you, because one I live in, one I rent out, I probably would have flipped it because I could rent the other house for more money. Just know you're in a longer term play. But if you can get into a property like this right now with a good loan, a conventional or an FHA loan, because the interest rates are so low, by the time you go to build, you're already gonna have a bit of equity built in, and rents are going to go up a little bit. Maybe the cost of materials will go up a little bit too, but at the end of the day, if you can come up with the cash to build this property out, you're going to have a nice cash flowing property with a great loan already in place on it. But just know it takes a while. Now, this one has more complications as well. It's in HPAWS, which is a historical zone, and it's also in earthquake zone, and it's also in liquefaction. So I sort of have everything going on here. That's part of the reason why this is taking longer. But you can look that up in your area to see. But yes, that's probably about right. 1 to 3 years is what you're being told is probably about right.
Thank you, Kristi.
Richie Rich.
Yeah, I just had a comment on the appraisals. I went through something similar when I bought a duplex up here in Crestline in 2020, and the first appraiser threw a fit, like wouldn't even really give us a number because it had 2 gas meters, and found out later that one of the gas meters was actually my neighbor's. So he was trying to say it was an illegal duplex and wouldn't even give a value. So he disappeared. We got another appraiser that finally did it. And then the appraiser that came out when I refinanced it a year later this year, totally knew about ADUs and was totally cool. And it appraised for like $150,000 more than I bought it for the year before. And then I bought a triplex also shortly after that. And same thing, like I just made my lender very aware of what, like, make sure we get an appraiser that knows what an ADU is, or I don't want him, like, or we're gonna throw a fit. And the appraiser came out and got full value of what we were under contract for. So I think it just like, I think it's getting better. It's just, there was a while there where it was kind of a roll of the dice with the appraiser knowing what an ADU was or not.
That's a great point. I mean, I was so new building these things. So junior ADUs came out January 2020, like I mentioned. Okay, I was so excited. I had a perfect property. I ended up flipping it, which I'm glad I did. I don't regret doing that. But I went into the city on like January 4th. And I'm like, yeah, I'd like to have your junior ADU rules, please. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. So they don't even know. So you have to be a little pushy and a little firm sometimes to get because you can do this. Everybody can do this. It's just sometimes like give yourself credit for what you know, because some of these cities are just so behind with everything. And appraisers, and you want to make sure you have the right people helping you with this.
Yeah, and it's not even just them. The like code enforcement people, showed up and they were like, you got to make this a multifamily triplex. I'm like, no, it's 2 ADUs. It's an ADU and a junior ADU. And they're like, what is that?
Yeah, they
Especially
don't
the junior
know.
ADU. They're like, no, this is a triplex. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yes, that's right. They just
So-
don't know. So stand your ground and get
Yeah.
people who know what they're doing to help you for sure.
Which brings me to my second question. Have you ever ran, or my actual question, sorry. Have you ever had any experience or know anybody with legalizing existing ADUs that were done not legally?
Oh, that's interesting. You bring that up. For some reason, one of my real estate friends in Palm Desert area, I don't know exactly, somewhere out there, built one without permits. Okay. Don't recommend doing that. I don't know why they did it. They've been in business for a while. They built one without permits. So now they have to go back and get it permitted. That's really not the right way of doing it. Just get it permitted right from the get-go. But don't, if you get busted and or maybe you buy one that's not permitted already, but it looks like the work's been done legitimately, then don't be afraid to just go and get that permitted. And
Yeah, that's what I'm really asking, because there's a lot up here in Crestline that have, you know, they just dug out the buildup and threw a unit down there. And
well,
you know,
I guess
and
the
they're
question
not,
is, does it
it's
look like it's been done right?
yeah, like let's
Because-
assume that it has.
So let's assume it has, then I would submit, there's a couple of ways you can do it. If it's already obviously done, then like I've had a designer draw the existing before showing that there's no kitchen bits in there, right? So you can just show it like you're going to do it, but really you've already done it. You can then have, because the inspector would normally need to come out and inspect for rough inspections. So they look at all the stuff before you put the drywall on. They're supposed to be checking for plumbing, electrical, and so on. Well, if it's already in there, then at that point, just pay for the permits, get the inspector to come out and meet them and talk to them and just say, look, you know, this was actually something that was already done. It looks like it was done legitimately. If the inspector is cool, they might just sign it off. If they want to be a pain in the butt that day, technically they can make you rip out the backsplash and everything else so that they can see that it was done properly. And I've had it go both ways. But at the end of the day, I always prefer to have a unit that I'm renting permitted, because then there's no question. There was a case back in the day where somebody was renting a second unit in Pasadena. This was before ADUs existed, but it was just a second unit they were renting that never got permitted. And that landlord had to end up paying all that rent back to the tenant for a course of like 10 years or whatever they had been collecting the rent, because technically it did not have a certificate of occupancy. So anytime I'm putting a tenant in a unit and collecting rent off of it, it is my preference to have that permitted and have a certificate of occupancy, which is the piece of paper that is issued after permits, the final permits are signed off by the city inspector.
Chrissy, I'm gonna add.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna add on that.
Jump in.
I think what you were saying was so correct. Definitely avoid going down the path of building an illegal ADU or continuing to carry on with an illegal ADU, because the second an inspector comes, sorry, pulled out my mic there. The second an inspector comes out there and catches that it's an illegal unit, based on like someone reporting it, then you're gonna end up paying double penalty of a double permit fee, and everything is looked at through like a microscope pretty much. So it makes everything 10 times much harder to process through, especially for the on-site inspections. After you pull your permits, the inspectors are just really nitpicky with every little bit and piece of it.
Yeah.
And it comes across like that on every single illegal built ADU that I've had to deal with clients.
Yeah. Yeah, because they think that you went around and, you know, were sneaky behind them, and they don't like that. They a lot of these city inspectors have some egos, right? So they want to show up and, just get you, and they will get you. So yeah, it's just better to sort of do it on the up and up, even though it just takes forever sometimes to get these inspections done. It's worth it in the end, in my opinion.
Cool. Thanks.
Bob, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, Kristi. I wanted to ask you about this image you have up here. You mentioned that you were going to try to subdivide it and then add a ADU to each and also a garage.
Mm-hmm. It'll fit, believe it or not.
I don't know if you can see this. You see me drawing?
No.
No?
Oh, yes.
So I'm just wondering if that's maybe your property line, then you kind of divide it here.
Yep.
And then
That's
maybe you're
it.
putting an ADU here at the back end and maybe over here. Maybe it's a double layer ADU, so the garage is below it. Or
Well, that's generally, yeah.
okay, just curious. I mean, I was having trouble trying to picture all that activity in those two lots.
Yeah, I know it seems like it's kind of small, but that lot is over 13,000 square feet. So, and there's requirements, well, at least there is right now. Maybe it will be easier with SB9, where you have to have a certain width and a certain length of the lot to split it. I mean, it just sort of all came together that this one lined up where I could do it. And just having it be on the corner, you can have, two separate accesses for each of the houses.
Right.
So yeah, so definitely look at that. And, there's other ways of, like I thought by the time I get through all this planning and I actually get the permits, I might be so sick of this. Maybe I just sell it to another investor with the permits in place, but then, I might as well go all the way because I know how to remodel houses and I have the crews to do it. But, that could be a strategy for you. If building all this stuff, scares you, then maybe you just want to get it to the point where it's permitted and then sell it to a builder. Because there's a builder will pay you a nice penny for that you've gone through all the steps of getting all that permitted, working with the city. Because then you hand it to them on silver platter, they go pull permits, they can start building right away and do what they do best. Because I mean, this will take $1 million to build all this out with the additions I want to do and the ADUs and the garages. So somehow I have to come up with that money. So if you don't have that money, then there's still money to be had in a deal like this. If you get it permitted, and sell it to a developer or partner with a developer.
Any other questions out there? Speak now.
This is Lorraine. I have one. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Go
go
for it.
ahead.
Hi, Kristi.
Hello.
Hi. So for me as a wholesaler, I've come across several properties recently that have unpermitted additions, ADUs. Some are additions on the house. A lot of them are converted garages. So if I'm looking at that, is that something, I'm assuming that's something buyers are interested in. However, I'm not really sure how to price it. Like you gave us the new construction price on an ADU, but what would be the price, the repair or rehab price per square foot on something like that? And then how much would I add to the value of the property, since I'm not going to be able to probably find a comp that is the same?
Yeah, all that's kind of tricky. I guess it just depends on who you're selling it to. Like I've made the mistake before of buying something where, there's been an addition, but it really hasn't been done right. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm just going to factor in, remodeling that addition. Well, in reality, I've had to rip the whole thing out because the foundation and the walls and everything else really wasn't done right to begin with. So I guess it depends case by case. Like if you see something that's been converted, does it look like it's been done right? And can you try to get that permitted? Like, are you trying to sell these homes to a cash buyer or to like an end buyer who's getting an FHA loan or a conventional loan?
Cash buyer.
Cash, yeah.
So a couple of them have been garages that have been converted that look like they've been done well. And then there was one that was definitely, that was an addition to, you know, they added a family room and they added a bathroom and they added a bedroom, but it was all unpermitted. And I'm assuming you could probably turn that into an ADU, but it's all unpermitted. The garages looked like they were fairly well. It was one in Duarte, one in Gardena, and one in, where was the other one? I think the other one was in Hawthorne.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they're cash buyers, then they should be doing their own due diligence, maybe with the cities even before they buy to see what they could do.
But
Or
for me to price it, to bring it to an end buyer.
you're going to know pretty quickly, because when I've wholesaled properties, if I price it right, I'm getting 10 phone calls in the first hour to go see that property.
Right.
And if you get 0 phone calls, then you know you're just like, there's something wrong with that.
Okay.
Maybe I could try to look at some of those with you, kind of one-offs, just to see,
Okay.
and maybe give you a perspective of what an investor might pay, kind of case by case.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kristen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a little tricky because everybody has their own, like I might be willing to pay more for something in Long Beach, for example, because I like that city for rentals and I know it very well. So maybe whereas a property in, you know, Riverside, I'm not going to be as interested in just because it's too far out of where I want to hold a rental property. So I'm basically willing to take more of a risk and pay a little bit more to try to convert or get that illegal conversion, you know, and make it legal just because of the location it's in.
So it makes sense for me to have in cash buyers that are probably just know what areas that they prefer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I may pass on something that somebody else may scoop up. And so, yeah, build your buyers list, I guess is the point.
Yeah, I have a few buyers, but I don't think I have as many as I need for the areas that I'm looking in, because I'm looking you know, like I said, all the way from Ventura to San Diego to Palm Springs, and I've been all over the place.
That could be something where maybe you partner with somebody who's got a buyer's list, like Rich. I think you wholesale deals, so maybe that's something you could call him up and just say, hey, you know what, I'm not really finding a buyer for this. Do you have anybody for this area? And you can do that with me too. You know, I would maybe have a buyer in certain areas. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Anyone else? Any more questions? Anyone else?
Kristi, was there anything special about this property that you're subdividing, or did they say no and you just kept pursuing it?
Well, they haven't said no yet. We're still going. So we're in the title process right now. So I don't understand why they can't just give me a new APN number for that second lot, but for some reason that seems to take forever. So that's where we are right now with this. But yeah, so far they haven't said no. Now, the one thing I had going for me on this property was it was already zoned R1. So how do you have 2 houses on an R1, right? It must have been grandfathered in. At some point, maybe this had been an R2 and then they rezoned to R1 maybe. So that's something you can look for. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Property Radar. If you don't know about that, that might be a great resource for you to find properties. That's Sean O'Toole's site. So, you know, and you can do all kinds of searches. You can put in like minimum lot square footage and different zoning, and you can pull up all kinds of properties on that you could potentially market to. And you can zoom in and you can, they link to, you know, a map where you can actually see the aerial view like this one. You can also, it also links to the owner's phone numbers and contact information. So that could be a resource you want to take a look at for some of this if you're interested in it.
And what city is this one in?
Well, this picture is in Los Angeles, but propertyradar.com, that covers, well, I think that's, well, it's definitely all of California, but I think it actually covers other states as well.
Yeah, it does now. It's other states.
Yeah.
Kristi, does it have to be an R1 lot for us to do an ADU?
No, you can have any zoning. Like R2, you can put ADUs. R4, you can put ADUs.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I don't have a question, but going back to discussion about appraisal, it seems to me that they're coming along. And initially, when ADUs became legal, it was really hard to appraise them. But Michael Blank, maybe you can tell us your story. You were telling me how your ADU appraised really well. I would like you to maybe share that with the group.
Oh yeah, sure. So I built in Torrance, and I built a 2-story, like about 850 square foot 2-story ADU garage conversion in Torrance, and I got a separate meter for it, separate, well, same gas, but anyways, got a different address for it, and then had it appraised, and it appraised as a duplex. And that got me a really good value. I went from 575 to 825. Where it hurt me was trying to refinance it. They were calling it an investment property instead of owner occupied. But I got around that eventually. But yeah, if you can appraise it as a duplex, the value's there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any more
Hey, Kristi,
questions?
I got a question. How it seems like you have a niche of finding hoarder houses. How did you come about with your sources?
I was waiting for that question. A lot of it has been through networking. When I first moved to California, I didn't know anybody. So I joined BNI, Business Network International. As an example, I mean, there's lots of different ones out there, but that's a way to network with other business owners and basically just get the word out there that that's what you do. So, you know, you're kind of the go-to person. If you're starting from scratch, wondering how you're going to get leads, there's so many ways. You can make connections with professional fiduciaries, right? There's a potential source. Or I have a connection with assisted living homes where if somebody needs to go into an assisted living home and they need the cash from the sale of their property in order to be able to afford that, then they call me and I help that person. And a lot of times, like, I don't know why they happen to be hoarding situations, but they are. People just know me for that. What's another way? I have a lawyer who just runs into trust situations and she's probably referred me six or 8 properties over the years. CPAs, they tend to know, you know, everything about your, you know, people's portfolios. You might want to contact a CPA to see if they, you know, have any landlord clients that are just sick of owning property. Maybe they want to start, you know, selling them off one by one and maybe holding the loan, right? There's some tax benefits for them to do that. So yeah, you know, like I've even heard of somebody, actually a friend of mine, he's in the drone business. And he's like, you know, when I fly drones over, I see these blue tarps and like the backyard's full of garbage. He says, would that be a good lead for you? I'm like, heck yeah. You know, let's figure out a way to like have the map of the blue tarps overlaying a map of addresses, and you pinpoint those addresses and maybe there's a way to find investment property that way that are hoarding situations. So just kind of getting creative. There is, I think there's a way, and I wanted to do this with my friend last weekend. We didn't get to it yet, but there's some app that you can drive around put an address in or take a picture and it pops up what that owner's contact information is. So basically driving for dollars. This is still really popular.
PropStream does that.
Yes, PropStream. That's right.
Yeah, that's what I use when I see a house, I park right in front of it and use it.
Yes. And do you take a picture or do you put the address in?
Put the address in.
Okay.
But you can also, like there's been times when I haven't known exactly what, like in an LA area, exactly what zip code I'm in to put or town to put the address. So you can actually you can map it, and you can use the map and then just pick out which house on the block you're looking at.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Thank you for jumping in and saying that. But yeah, you can be literally driving around and spotting the fixers and getting the owner's contact information right up on your phone.
And you can get the comps. You can skip trace it if you need the phone number. I mean, you can do it right there on the app from in front of the house.
So there's some ideas for you for acquisition, whoever asked that question.
Thanks, Kristi.
Great info. Thanks.
Any more questions?
I have a question, and it goes back to acquisitions. How do you find like LLC's contact information?
I don't know. Does anybody know? Want to jump in and answer that one?
You can skip trace LLCs as well.
In Illinois here, we just use LLC lookup, and then it tells you who the registered agent is and other information. A lot of times people create LLCs as an afterthought, so they've got their information in there and it's backtrackable.
A lot of the problem that I've run into with that is because a lot of the LLCs, so I mean, a lot of the ones I found anyway, have just been using their registered, whoever they're registered with, it has that contact info instead of theirs. I end up using white pages and things like that, or People Verify or whatever. I use those things to dig up stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would start with the freebies. There's the white pages, there's Spokio. The most success I've had with looking people up is a paid one, and it's hard to get. It's through TLO, TransUnion, or whatever, one of the credit reporting agencies. And anyway, there's certain criteria to be able to get that. It's $50 minimum a month, whether or not you use it. And then if you go over a certain number of searches, it's, $1 to $10 per search per month. So that's a more advanced one. So you want to start with the free ones first, but that one is very accurate. The ones you pay the money for.
Any other questions? All in all done? Okay. Everyone, let's thank Kristi for her time and her information. And I want to thank you for showing up, and being there. This is her first time appearing. And I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Thomas. I appreciate it.
No
Thank
problem.
you, Kristi. It was great information.
Thank you.
Hold on for a second. Now, next month, we went from ADU, now we're going to, Jay Massey is going to be speaking about long short-term rentals and Airbnbs next month. Also, coming up tomorrow, for those who don't know, Pasadena Phoebe. So if you want to get to a meeting, go to Christina Suter's meeting this upcoming, which is actually tomorrow. Richie Rich, you want to talk about Saturday and next Wednesday? Are you still here?
Yeah, sure. Saturdays, our Saturday networking coffee in Riverside at Back Porch Homes showroom. It's off at Adams in the 91. It is at 9 a.m. All the details are on meetup.com. You can go to meetup.com/IEREIC. And then again, John Schaub is speaking next week on Wednesday. He's the author of Building Wealth One House at a Time. You don't know who John Schaub is, you should. And he's going to be talking 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 22nd. And that is on Zoom. Details again, meetup.com/IEREIC.
Okay, so you're welcome. So basically, I appreciate you coming, supporting, continue to support. Darren, you did a wonderful job. Please do it again for me next month.
Got it.
All right. So like I said, next month, Jay Massey will be speaking about long short-term rentals. If you don't know who he is, you can find him on Facebook, Cash Flow Diaries. Tomorrow night is Phoebe. Saturday is Saturday Morning Coffee. Next Wednesday is the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Meeting. So please make sure you stay a part of the community. More knowledge, more money. Have a good night.
Thank you.
If you want to save the chat, go ahead and do so.
Thomas, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
How can I get the information about the Pasadena thing you were talking about tomorrow?
Go to meetup.com, go to Phoebe, B-I-E, was it Phoebe, B-I-F-I or whatever it is, .com on Meetup, and you can find it, or email me and I will send you the link for it.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Okay, we still got some people here. Y'all want to chit chat for a little while? Chris, I know you got a lot of stuff to talk about.
It's great, man. I learned a lot. Like I didn't know half of that. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say it. Probably like 2 things I knew. That was fantastic. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. So
I appreciate you coming. I really appreciate you coming. Very good. Come on, talk to me since you're still here.
What's up?
Talk to me. You know you got a lot of stuff to talk about as well.
I think just listening to Kristi, learning. I was gonna say we lend on that type of stuff. So we help with your appraisals if you're unsure what a hard money lender's lending on. I know you do some of that too. So.
And you didn't jump in. What's your problem, man?
I know.
She always want us to promote. Always. Never
ask you what the rates you're getting for hard money.
What's that?
What are your hard money rates now?
As much as we can get. We're 8 to 9%, depending on the deal.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Hey, Chris, I got a question for you. Bedgood?
Yeah.
You do any as is, I should say as completed appraisals? I wanted to catch Kristi, but it seemed like we were ending the meeting. But now that we have some people hanging around, I'll ask the question anyway. Like in that image where she had a big pin that she's going to subdivide and then add ADUs and garages. Do you help with giving an estimate, an appraisal of stuff that's not even existing yet, just so that you can quantify whether or not the project is even worth pursuing?
Yeah.